Hey guys, this is Jeff over at Jeff Robbins Photography, and recently my dad asked me about the 12.9-inch iPad Pro, and I thought it was kind of funny, ironic, because I had just recently used one for about a week, and so I thought I'd put this together on my experience and for him, and I figured I'll share it with you guys, and hopefully it maybe helps someone out there with deciding on whether or not the iPad Pro is for them or not. So let's get on with it. Here we go. It's been out for a little while, at least the 12.9. I think the 12.9 came out about 2 years ago, and the 9.7 came out sometime last year, that being 2016. And like I said, recently I got to play around with one of the 12.9s for about a week or so, and I still think a lot of people were kind of curious who that is for. So one thing to keep in note with the 12.9 inch is that it is not small in the hand. It's not something I would think I really find anybody lugging around in their bag and popping out at a Starbucks or so forth. It's a bit almost overbearing for that. You definitely will get people noticing a huge, almost 13-inch tablet in your hand at a Starbucks or coffee place. Anyway, little plug for Starbucks there. Anyway, not that they need it. So, reasons that you would want to get the iPad Pro, in particular the 12.9 inch, is for the massive screen on that, and not just massive, but beautiful screen. It is a very high resolution screen. So if you are using it for photo editing or just looking at photos, if you're using it for video editing, it's brilliant to look at. You got a lot of real estate. It's nice and large. If you like to make the font and everything larger on the iPad Pro, on an iPad, the 12.9 will definitely do that. Makes it a lot easier to read magazine, iPad magazines and so forth. The iPads in general the iPad Pros, are much, quite a bit more powerful than the regular iPad. So future proofing, so as far as as applications get larger and more powerful, the iPad Pro is it's going to be less likely to get obsolete as far as the processing power for future proofing your device. So that in itself, if you can spend the extra money for the iPad Pro over the regular iPad, I would do that. Games in particular on the 12-inch, 12.9 inch, games are really fun on that. It's large and it's quite fun to play games on there. Again, the image quality is just magnificent on that device. And again, lastly, for more of my kind of use, which is photo editing and video editing and so forth, if you like to do that on an iPad, which is kind of fun, it's the 12.9 inch is really quite good for that. It's got 4 gigs of RAM as opposed to 2 gigs of RAM on the 9.7. So that does help with the processing of it. They both have basically the same processing chip, the 9-something X, but the 12.9 inch, the larger of the two, has 4 gigs of RAM, which might help a little bit with doing multiple layers if you're doing Photoshop editing, or if you're doing 4K video editing. It will help with that kind of editing power. So obviously the iPad Pro is going to be quite a bit more powerful than the regular iPad. At that point, it's as powerful as many regular computers out there. So that kind of begs for the question of why not just go to a desktop version or a desktop laptop or so forth, or even a MacBook, like a MacBook 12-inch. If the iPad Pro is getting to the point of the power of those, not to mention getting closer to the price tag of many laptops as well, especially in the Windows arena. And that is because there are some apps that are in the app ecosystem that are just really fun to use. A great example was there is a crossword game that my dad likes to play with other people on the iPad, and I don't think there's a desktop version for that. So that would be a reason to stay with the app, is because with the iPad Pro is because there's apps that are in the ecosystem of the iPad world that I don't think you'll be able to get on a desktop version, even a Mac. So that is one. There are certain things about certain apps, like say for me, the Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Word. The apps have just pretty much all the features I need. I don't really need the gazillion features of the regular desktop version, and so not having them there just actually makes the whole experience more simple and more enjoyable for me to just not be bogged down with all these other additional features that I don't really use. So another reason to go with the iPad Pro is for the iPad or the iPad Pro Apple's Pencil, which I will mention in a few minutes more about it. But the iPad Pro is the only ones that will work with the actual Apple Pencil. You can still use different styluses like Bamboo or something on the other iPads, but not on the iPad Pro is the one that if you're going to use the Apple Pencil for, at least at the time of this video, I believe. So why would you not want to get the iPad or even the iPad Pro and go with a desktop like a MacBook or something for portability and so forth? Why would you not want to go with the iPad system? Well, for one, the iPad and iPhones and so forth, all the iOS devices are great at importing information into them. You can import photos with a SD dongle into an iPad or even an iPhone. You can get a USB one similar to this as well, and import photos and so forth with a USB drive. And once they're in your iPad or iPhone or whatever, you can edit the photos, you can do things with it and so forth. But that's kind of where the story ends. You can't export them back out onto a USB drive or SD card or anything like that. At least as far as I know, the only way that I have found to be able to do that is to share them into a bucket system like Dropbox or iCloud, and then from my desktop computer I can bring them back up and then save them on my desktop to here. So again, just to recap that, the iPad and iOS and iPhones and all that tablet-based or Apple tablet-based system is great for importing the information. Once it's on your device, you can do stuff with it, but getting it out of the system is where the challenge is. Outside of, yes, you can share it with people, you can save it to a Dropbox or anything like that, but you can't directly put it back onto something like this to give to somebody. So that is, to me, probably the main reason to go to a desktop kind of version, like a laptop, a MacBook or something like that. One of the other reasons would be is if you really want something where you have a trackpad. There is no mouse on an iPad, so everything with iPad is touch. But that brings us to the competition, which does have a mouse you can attach a mouse to, or a trackpad with a keyboard, and that would be the Microsoft Surface Pro 4, or possibly soon to be the Pro 5. Those you can have a trackpad, finger gesture device for inputting information. So the other reason is if you do want the full scale application or programs, so like say Photoshop, if you want like all of the features and everything on Photoshop, you would need to go to a desktop version. If you want all the features of Excel spreadsheet, all the features on there, you would have to go to the desktop version. The iPad kind of miniature versions of these programs will be shortlisted on the features and so forth. So again, if you want to be able to export files in and out of your system, you're going to have to go to something like Microsoft Surface Pro 4 or something like that. That tells you the competition there with that. So anyway, that brings us to prices. iPad Pros are going to be a premium over the regular iPads, mainly because of the power, also the additional peripherals like the pencil and also the keyboards that you attach. What's really cool with the iPad Pro is the keyboards that can attach to it, from Apple at least, actually don't need to be charged. They connect to the side of the iPad with these connectors, and they get all the information there. They power the keyboard. It's quite a nice system. So that is one of the reasons why you're going to be paying a little bit premium for the iPad Pro, is because of that. So prices. The lowest I have seen is from Walmart for a refurbished one. I've seen them for as low as $4.99 for a refurbished iPad Pro, and I believe that was even a 128 gig. I do recommend staying with the 128, especially if you're going to be doing like photos onto it and so forth. You're going to want to get at least a 128. There are some 256 gig available out there. I didn't really look at them since I tend to put stuff on there and then I save them to like Dropbox or iCloud. So for me, 128 is more than enough. There are 32s. I don't recommend for that, especially if you're going to put a lot of applications on there. Even applications will add up after a while. So stick with the 128 if you're going to go for the iPad Pro. So the other place, so you have Walmart. I found the refurbished are pretty good there as far as prices go there. Amazon is pretty good. I do recommend sticking with the Amazon if you're going to do the used, which is where the good price, you can get a better price, is on the used Amazon. I would stick with the Like New. And if you're a Prime member, stick with Prime Like New. That way, if there's a problem, you can return it in I think 30 days or something like that. Again, the other option I'm a big fan of is the Best Buy, because you can actually go and see the actual iPad Pro in your hands, and that is the Best Buy open box items. Those are items that people have gotten and they have brought back. Now within them there are 3 different levels. There's what they call fair. I'm sorry, there's four different levels. One that's called fair, which means that it's got a pretty good gash that's been cosmetically messed up in some way. So I tend to stay away from those unless you just don't mind the body being a bit gashed up. Number 2, the next one up, is called satisfactory. I've actually gotten a few of those things. They have maybe a little bit of a scratch or so, but usually very minimal. Those are called satisfactory. The next one up from there is called excellent. Those are basically like brand new, and then there's also certified excellent. I'm not quite sure what the difference between there. You'd have to ask them there, but to me, I don't really find a big difference. I certainly wouldn't pay myself extra unless there is some hidden reason that I just don't know about. And that brings me to the pencil here. This is a great example. This is an extremely expensive device. If you're not going to use, don't get it. But for photo editing and so forth, which I do, this has been really quite great to use for cutting out parts of images and so forth like that, using different features of like the brightness and so forth. You can really use the pencil. Is really good for that. This is a good example. This was an open item product. It was in excellent condition, and I got it for quite a good price compared to the regular one. I would have had to have waited and saved up for quite a bit to get a regular non-open version of that. So anyway, I hope that helped with your deciding of the iPad Pro. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments, and have a cool day. Ciao.